They sold 10 million albums in 4 years, made more money than they could spend. Then David Gates stood in a courtroom watching his bandmates testify against him for $3 million. The soft rock kings who gave you Make It With You and Everything I Own destroyed themselves so completely that Gates wouldn't speak to his partners for over 20 years. Not at funerals, not at reunions, not even when the money finally ran out. This is what 12 top 40 hits bought them. Lawsuits that lasted longer than their success, egos that exploded like grenades, and a silence so total that when Jimmy Griffin died in 2005, Gates didn't even send flowers. They had everything. Fame that came overnight, money that flowed like water, talent that critics called genius, and they demolished it all in exactly 18 months of pure hatred. The man who wrote If watched sheriff's deputies inventory his recording equipment. The voice behind Baby I'ma Want You spent his last years playing county fairs to crowds of 200. They went from selling out Madison Square Garden 3 nights straight to arguing over who owned a 12-year-old mixing board, from private jets to bankruptcy court, from brotherhood to restraining orders. Picture this: 1970, Los Angeles, the biggest soft rock sound in America, and David Gates is signing a contract he hasn't read. By 1973, that signature would cost him everything. But the real tragedy? They were actually friends once, before the millions, before the lawyers, before Jimmy Griffin said the words that would end everything. Gates grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where his father ran a small music school out of their garage, $8 a week for piano lessons. His mother worked double shifts at the hospital, while David learned every instrument his father could teach. By 14, he was playing high school dances for $20 a night, saving every penny in a coffee can under his bed. That coffee can would one day hold royalty checks worth $200,000 a month. But first, it held sweaty $5 bills from playing Louie Louie until his fingers bled. Jimmy Griffin came from Memphis poverty that made Gates look rich. His father abandoned the family when Jimmy was 7. His mother cleaned offices at night, slept 4 hours, then cleaned houses during the day. Griffin taught himself guitar on an instrument he found in a dumpster behind a pawn shop. 3 strings, no case. He practiced until his fingertips turned to leather. Robb Royer's story was different, but ended the same. Son of a traveling salesman from Denver who died when Robb was 12. Heart attack in a motel room in Amarillo, left his family nothing but debt and a 1959 Buick that barely ran. Royer's mother sold everything they owned except Robb's guitar. She knew music was his only shot at something better. 3 kids from nothing, headed straight for everything, then straight back to nothing, but worse, because they'd tasted what they'd never have again. Subscribe if you want to hear how millionaires become enemies. They met in Los Angeles in 1968, when everyone with a guitar was trying to become the next Beatles. Gates was producing records for other artists, making $300 a week and sleeping in his car between sessions. Griffin was washing dishes at a diner on Sunset Strip, sneaking into clubs at night to watch bands he knew he was better than. Royer was selling vacuum cleaners door to door in the valley, practicing guitar in apartment building stairwells because his neighbors threatened to call the cops. They found each other at a session for someone else's album. Gates needed a harmony vocalist. Griffin needed $75 for rent. That first session lasted 14 hours. They knew immediately what they had. Gates' melodies were sophisticated, almost classical. Griffin's voice was pure gold, smooth as warm honey. Royer could arrange harmonies that made grown men cry. They recorded demos in Gates' garage, using equipment he'd bought at police auctions and repaired himself. No money for real studio time. They ate peanut butter sandwiches for dinner and called it a business meeting. Griffin shoplifted guitar strings. Royer sold blood twice a month for gas money. Gates pawned his watch, his television, everything except his piano. They were 28 years old and running out of time. The music business didn't want 30-year-old rookies. But those garage demos were perfect. Elektra Records heard something nobody else did. January 1969, they got the call that changed everything, then destroyed everything. But first, they had to choose a name. Gates wanted to call the band Pleasure Fair. Griffin thought that sounded like a massage parlor. Royer suggested Captain Thunder. They were sitting in a booth at a coffee shop on Ventura Boulevard, arguing over names while sharing a single order of toast because that's all they could afford. The waitress, exhausted from a 12-hour shift, slapped the check on their table. "You want more bread?" she asked. Griffin looked at the empty basket, looked at their empty wallets, looked at Gates and Royer. "Bread," he said. "We're bread." It was January 22, 1969, 3 in the morning, and they'd just named themselves after the one thing they needed most: money, food, bread. The irony would haunt them forever. Their first single, "Make It With You," was recorded in 6 hours because that's all the studio time Elektra would pay for. Gates played piano, organ, and bass. Griffin sang lead and played guitar. Royer added percussion using cardboard boxes and a $20 tambourine. The engineer said it was the cleanest recording he'd heard in 5 years. No overdubs needed, no fixes. Just 3 guys who'd practiced in a garage until their hands bled, playing like their lives depended on it. Because they did. The single hit #1 on August 22, 1970. They were eating dinner at that same coffee shop when they heard it on the radio. Griffin started crying. Gates couldn't speak. Royer walked outside and threw up in the parking lot from pure adrenaline. They'd made it. Subscribe to hear what making it really cost them. "Make It With You" stayed at #1 for 3 weeks. Suddenly, they had money. Real money. Gates bought a house in Encino for cash. $157,000. Griffin got a Porsche 911. Royer bought his mother a house in Denver and flew first class to give her the keys. The album went gold in 2 months, platinum in 6. They were on every television show that mattered. Ed Sullivan, Johnny Carson. Dick Clark called them the future of American music. They played the troubadour to prove they hadn't forgotten where they came from. 3,000 people showed up for a venue that held 500. The fire department shut it down. They moved the show to the Greek Theater, sold it out in 4 hours. But success was already eating them alive. Griffin wanted to tour constantly. Gates hated the road, preferred the studio. Royer was caught in the middle, trying to keep peace. The arguments started small. Who got the writing credit? Who sang which verse? Who stood where on stage? But money makes everything bigger, especially egos. Their second album, On the Waters, had to be perfect. The pressure was crushing. Gates spent 18-hour days in the studio, remixing the same songs over and over. Griffin started drinking, first beer, then whiskey, then whatever made the pressure stop. Royer saw it all coming apart but couldn't stop it. The album spawned 3 more hits. If, Baby I'ma Want You, Everything I Own, each one bigger than the last. They were unstoppable until they stopped themselves. By late 1971, they were the biggest soft rock band in America. Baby I'ma Want You hit #3 in January 1972. The album sold 2 million copies in 10 weeks. They were making $80,000 per show, playing 60 shows in 70 days. The money was astronomical. Gates was earning $600,000 a year just from songwriting royalties. Griffin and Royer were making half that from performing and recording. They bought everything they'd ever wanted: cars, houses, boats, studios. But the touring was killing them, literally. Griffin's drinking was out of control. He'd pass out backstage, wake up, perform perfectly, then pass out again. Gates developed bleeding ulcers from stress. Royer's marriage was collapsing. His wife hadn't seen him for 3 months straight. They canceled a European tour when Gates collapsed in Chicago. The doctor said he was 2 days from a perforated ulcer, that would have killed him. Griffin responded by getting arrested for drunk driving in Phoenix. The police report said his blood alcohol was 3 times the legal limit. Royer bailed him out, then quit the band that night, December 15, 1971. But contracts meant he couldn't really leave. Elektra owned them for 3 more albums. They had to keep going, had to keep pretending they weren't destroying each other. The 3rd album, Guitar Man, was recorded with session musicians because they couldn't stand to be in the same room. Gates produced it alone, sending tapes to Griffin and Royer for their parts. They never met during the entire recording. The album still went gold. The machine kept running even as the operators collapsed. Larry Knechtel joined in early 1972, replacing Royer, who was now just a creative consultant collecting checks while staying home. Knechtel was a session legend who'd played on hundreds of hits. He thought bread would be easy money. He was wrong. The hatred between Gates and Griffin was poisonous. They communicated through lawyers, through managers, through anybody but each other. Mike Botts came in on drums, another session pro who needed the money. He lasted 8 months before the toxicity drove him away. But they kept touring because the contracts demanded it. The money demanded it. The machine demanded it. March 1972, they played Madison Square Garden. 20,000 people singing every word. Backstage, Gates and Griffin were separated by security because Griffin had threatened to beat his ass over a chord change. The crowd never knew. They smiled on stage, played the hits, took their bows, then returned to their separate dressing rooms, separate cars, separate hotels. The reviews called them perfect. Rolling Stone said they were America's answer to the Beatles. Nobody mentioned that they hadn't had a real conversation in 6 months. Nobody knew that Gates was meeting with lawyers about dissolving the band. Nobody saw Griffin drinking a 5th of Jack Daniels before every show just to stand next to Gates. The 4th album was their last chance. They knew it. Elektra knew it. Everyone knew it. Baby I'ma Want You was still selling, but the singles from Guitar Man had stalled. They needed magic. Instead, they got war. The final recording sessions happened in September 1972 at Sound City Studios in Van Nuys. Gates had written 12 new songs. Griffin brought 8. They fought over every single track. Which songs to include? Who would sing lead? How loud the guitar should be? Griffin wanted rock. Gates wanted ballads. The engineer later said it was the most uncomfortable session he'd ever witnessed. They literally stood with their backs to each other while recording. The arguing got so bad that other bands in the building complained. Elektra sent a mediator. He quit after 2 days. The album was finished through pure hatred and willpower, mixed by Gates alone because Griffin refused to participate, released in March 1973 as The Best of Bread because they couldn't agree on original material. A greatest hits album after only 4 years. The admission of defeat was obvious, but it sold 3 million copies, their biggest success built on their biggest failure. The tour to support it was scheduled for 40 dates. They made it through 12 before everything exploded. April 15, 1973, Austin, Texas. Griffin was drunk before soundcheck. Gates refused to go on. Griffin went on alone, told the crowd Gates was too good to perform for them. Gates watched from the wings, then walked out. Not just from the show, from the band, from the partnership, from everything they'd built. The remaining 28 shows were canceled. Lawsuits filed the next morning. Bread was dead. But the lawyers were just getting started. The real devastation hadn't even begun. The first lawsuit came from Elektra. Breach of contract, $3.7 million. Gates countersued, claiming Griffin's drinking made fulfilling the contract impossible. Griffin sued Gates for defamation, $2.2 million. Royer sued both of them for unpaid royalties, $800,000. The lawyers made more than the band ever did. Depositions lasted months. Gates testified that Griffin had threatened him with a broken bottle in Dallas. Griffin testified that Gates had stolen songwriting credits. Royer testified that they were both crazy. The court documents ran to 1,100 pages, financial records subpoenaed, personal letters entered as evidence, their entire friendship dissected and destroyed in public record. The cases dragged on for 3 years, 3 years of legal bills, 3 years of frozen assets, 3 years of pure hatred crystallized in legal briefs. Meanwhile, their music kept selling. The Best of Bread went platinum twice more during the lawsuits, money flowing to lawyers instead of musicians. Gates tried to go solo. His album flopped. Griffin formed a new band. Nobody cared. Royer became a screenwriter. Some success, but nothing like before. They'd destroyed the Golden Goose and couldn't build another. September 1976, they settled. Nobody won. Elektra got partial damages. Gates kept his songwriting credits. Griffin got a restraining order. Royer got enough to cover his legal bills. The lawyers got everything else. $7 million in legal fees between all parties for a band that existed for 4 years. The math was insane. The destruction complete. Gates retreated to his ranch in Northern California, wouldn't give interviews, wouldn't discuss bread, wouldn't even allow their music in his home. Griffin moved to Nashville trying to write country songs. The drinking got worse. DUI arrests in 1978 to 1980, 1983. His liver was failing by age 45. Royer found peace in obscurity, wrote for television, raised a family, never mentioned bread unless forced. The money ran out faster than anyone expected. Bad investments, worse management. Gates lost his ranch to the IRS in 1982, $900,000 in back taxes. Griffin declared bankruptcy in 1984. No assets, no income, no future. Royer was the only one who managed his money wisely, lived quietly, stayed sober, stayed sane. The 1980s were brutal for all of them. Gates played casino lounges in Reno, 200. People in rooms that held 1,000. Griffin was playing bars in Tennessee, sometimes 50 people, sometimes less. The soft rock kings reduced to wedding singers. Their music was everywhere, elevators, grocery stores, dentist offices, but they weren't. They were ghosts haunting their own success. In 1985, someone offered them $2 million for a reunion tour, 20 cities, all the hits. Split 3 ways. They needed the money desperately. Griffin was facing eviction. Gates was selling his publishing rights piecemeal. But they said no. The hatred was stronger than poverty. They'd rather starve than share a stage. That's how deep the poison went. Then came 1996. 23 years after the breakup. Griffin was dying. Liver failure from decades of alcohol. He needed money for treatment. Swallowed his pride and called Gates. Gates agreed to one reunion tour just for the money. No friendship, no reconciliation, just business. Royer agreed to return, Knechtel too. The tour sold out immediately, 56 shows, everyone packed. Fans who'd waited 2 decades to hear those harmonies again. They played the hits perfectly, professional, polished, dead inside, no eye contact on stage, separate transportation, separate hotels. The money was good, $5 million gross. After expenses and management, each took home $600,000, enough to survive, not enough to matter. Griffin used his share for medical bills. Gates paid off debts. The tour ended December 1996 in Los Angeles, the Greek Theater, where they'd triumphed in 1970. They played Make It With You as the encore. The crowd cried. The band walked off in different directions. No goodbye, no handshake, nothing. They toured again in 1997. Pure economics. Griffin was getting sicker. Gates needed the income. 42 shows, smaller venues. The magic was gone. Everyone could feel it. The music was perfect, but empty, like a beautiful corpse. Griffin collapsed in Phoenix, the same city where everything started falling apart in 1971. Rushed to the hospital, liver failing completely. The tour continued without him, session musicians filling in, Gates singing Griffin's parts, the ultimate insult to their legacy. January 11, 2005. Jimmy Griffin died. Complications from cancer that started in his liver. He was 61 years old. Gates didn't attend the funeral, sent no flowers, made no statement. Royer went. Said Griffin looked peaceful, the first peace he'd found since 1973. Griffin's last interview was in 2004. He said the saddest thing about Bread wasn't the lawsuits or the money. It was that they'd actually been friends, real friends. Before success poisoned everything, he said he missed writing songs with Gates in that garage, missed the hunger, missed believing they were building something beautiful together. Gates gave his last interview about Bread in 2006. 1 year after Griffin died, he said Griffin was talented but impossible. Said the music was worth saving, but the relationship wasn't. Said he had no regrets. But his voice cracked when he mentioned that garage, those nights eating peanut butter sandwiches, when they were poor but united, when the dream was stronger than the reality. Royer was the only one who found wisdom in the wreckage. He said success is sulfuric acid on the soul. It reveals who you really are by burning away everything else. They weren't strong enough to survive what they'd earned. The music outlived the men who made it. Make It With You still plays 500 times a day somewhere in the world, generating royalties for estates and lawyers. The harmony's still perfect, the pain still hidden, the tragedy complete. Today, David Gates is 84 years old, living quietly in Washington State. He owns a small ranch, raises cattle, never performs. His royalties still generate about $200,000 a year. Enough to live, not enough to forget. He has all of Bread's master recordings in a vault, never listens to them, says they're too painful, like looking at pictures of dead children. Royer is 79, still writing, still working, the only one who escaped with his sanity intact. He says Bread taught him that success without friendship is failure, that money without meaning is poverty, that harmony in music means nothing without harmony in life. The band that sold 20 million albums couldn't sell reconciliation to themselves. The voices that blended perfectly couldn't speak civilly. The writers of love songs couldn't find any for each other. Mike Botts died in 2005, the same year as Griffin. Cancer. He was 57. Larry Knechtel died in 2009. Heart attack. He was 69. The band is mostly dead now. Just Gates and Royer left. Two old men who once made millions sing but couldn't make peace. The Greek Theater, where they played their final show together, is still there, still hosting concerts. The dressing room where they fought has been renovated 6 times. No trace of the blood they drew with words. But sometimes, late at night, security guards say they hear harmonies, perfect harmonies, coming from empty rooms. The music industry learned nothing from Bread's destruction. Bands still explode over money, still sue over credits, still choose hatred over healing. But Bread's collapse was special in its completeness. They didn't just break up, they obliterated each other, legally, financially, emotionally, spiritually. The soft rock princes became hard rock casualties without ever playing a power chord. Their destruction was all acoustic, all melodic, all devastating. Gates once said the worst part wasn't losing the money or the fame. It was losing the ability to hear their music without pain. Every song a reminder of what they threw away. Every harmony a ghost of dead friendship. Griffin died never forgiving. Gates lives never forgetting. Royer survives by never looking back. 3 different endings to the same tragedy. 3 men who touched millions but couldn't touch each. Other with kindness after the money came. The bread they named themselves after became the bread that broke them, body and blood, flesh and wine. Communion turned to excommunication. Subscribe if you understand that success is the deadliest addiction, that money is the sharpest blade, that harmony is the cruelest joke when you're screaming in different keys. Bread proved you can sell your soul in soft rock. You can destroy your brothers with ballads. You can make millions cry with your music while you're crying alone in your mansion. They had 12 top 40 hits, each one a milestone, each one a millstone, each one a monument to what money does to music, to friendship, to men who once shared everything but ended up sharing nothing but lawyers.